G'day folks. Today I wanted to have a little chat about flex checking for my Patreon channel, and I've got a few blades here that I've just finished heat treat on yesterday. So this is about the time that, well, not now, but this is the stage of the sword making process where I will flex check a blade, and there's a couple of reasons I do that, and I'll just go into that. I don't call it flex testing because I'm not testing it. I'm not looking for the limits of this sword's capabilities, which is a bit of a bone that I've got with a lot of the YouTube videos and the rhetoric that was going around when I got into sword making like 15 years or so ago. There's all this flex testing bullshit, and I'd never agreed with it. Everyone gets sucked into it. There's a lot of rhetoric and myth and bullshit around swords, and that's one of the things that I have beef with. So I'm calling it flex checking. I'm not flex testing. I'm not trying to figure out, what this sword can be capable of and bending it around 180 degrees and seeing if it'll come back to true, because you're just going to fuck up your sword if you do that. A medieval sword was never expected to bend around like a bloody sports foil and return to true. Medieval swords did not have the spring capabilities that modern spring steel has. It was a hodgepodge of steels that were normalized the best they could, and they held an edge and you could kill someone with it. There's a lot of bullshit in sword making. So alright, two reasons that I flex check, and that is, one, after I've heat treated, it's an indicator that the steel has turned to a hardened martensite state, which I don't do it until after I've tempered. So I'll do a quick file check just to sort of get a feel for it, and generally I can get a feel that, okay, the sword's probably changed, transformed. And then when I've tempered it, after I've tempered it, I'll do a flex check and just make sure, okay, it's bending more than it would normally take to take a set, but I'm not bending it like some 90-degree angle just to see, some insane capability of the blade, because they're not having to do that. They do have to flex a fair bit in use. I've got some videos where I'll show you an interesting video. Anyway, but yeah, I'm just checking that it will flex the amount that you'd expect in normal use, or more than if it was soft, and return to true. As an example, I might bend it like that and go, yep, that's nice and straight, and you just get a feel for it. That's a good spring. Whereas if it was in its annealed state, that would take a set. So it's an indicator, but I'm not testing it. I'm just doing a check, just to confirm, yeah, it's a spring. Now the second time when I flex check is in grinding. In after heat treatment, I'll put in the final grind and geometries on the blade, and that's another reason I don't want to flex test it after heat treatment, is because the blade doesn't have its final geometries. So in the final grinding of the blade, one of the jobs to do is to make sure that the whole blade flexes and distributes the stresses of the flex, and not having stiff points and hinges. Whereas in its current state, where I've just ground it down for heat treatment, which is not its final form, it's got thicker edges, it's a little bit thicker through the body, and it does have stiff spots. Like this blade, this part of this blade is stiff at the moment. So if I flex it, and if you can see, there's a hinge here. I don't know if that's showing up on the video. Hopefully I'll zoom in. There's a hinge here, and it's not flexing here. There's a stiff point here and a hinge here. So if I went after heat treat and put this massive bend on that, it would put so much stress into a point of the blade, focus there, and not along here. It's not a true indicator. It's not the true performance of the blade. So I liken that to tillering in bow making, And I think bow making has a lot to do with blade making. And I definitely recommend anyone who's making swords to at least make one longbow, like a self-bodied longbow, from one piece of wood, and get a feel for that tillering process. And that's another way I wanted to relate it to the sword, is when you're tillering a longbow, so tillering is where you stand the bow, you have a tree with a gauge on it for the draw length, and you've got a test string on it, and you're pulling that string out to the draw length or less than, as you're slowly removing material from the limbs of the bow, and you're watching that flex, and you're just incrementally removing materials, tuning the flex until you get to your desired draw length at your desired draw weight. Now when you're tillering a bow, you never pull it more than your maximum draw length, which say is 28 inch. So you're never going to till it beyond 28 inches because you're going to overstress the bow. But you're also never going to till it, say if you're aiming for 40 pounds at 28 inches, you're never going to apply more than 40 pounds to the bow, even when it's still got extra meat and you're only pulling 18, 19, 20, 21 inches. You're still only going to apply 40 pounds to the bow, and you're only going to do it until you get to 28 inches. And in that period of time is your tuning time, where you're tuning the arc of those bow limbs incrementally, bit by bit. So again, with the blade, I'm not going to go and chuck on maximum flex when I haven't tuned the flex through the blade so that it distributes the stresses, because otherwise I'm just going to put a shitload of stress in one spot that isn't designed to or expected to take that much stress. So I liken it to bow making. It's the same theory basically. As I grind this down after heat treat and I tune in the flex and I distribute the flex through the whole thing, that's what the blade is expected to take in use. So yeah, there's a lot of rhetoric and stupidity in the community when it comes to flex testing. You ignore it. Don't flex test your blades, whether you're a consumer, a client, you bought a sword, or you're a swordsmith. You're flex checking it. It can be an indicator that you've got your steel has transformed and so forth. You're not flex testing it, because if you do, you're gonna overstress the blade, you're gonna weaken it, you're going to take it beyond the limits of what it's expected to do, and then it's not going to be able to do its job properly, and you're going to shorten the life of your blade. So yeah, that's what I want to say about flex checking. Now, leaf blade. Case in point, flex checking this leaf blade, you can see it's got a narrowed waist. I'll just bring it up to the light. You can see there's a narrower waist.